It counts down.
Like your small too.
No, I've not heard from him. So let's just get started. So we have given Kathy time to think overnight. So what hours, what years, Kathy, did you come to English? Just
what if we laid out in terms of that frame what we think is important, what's most important there, and then decide where it should be. You know what I mean? I mean, can we? It would be hard to do on this document, I guess.
You mean like get that piece of paper and
right,
write?
Yeah, I
like a
guess
white sheet.
What if we? So here are the things we're gonna. I guess we could use some. I mean,
So can you do one of these?
that's good with me.
And
I
then just think through
I'm
what
just not,
would be the
I'm personally just not, I mean, so what would we have as the expectations for U.S. history? The whole thing, and then, where should
I'm not 100% sure I'm following what you're thinking, but I'm going to put two pieces of paper.
I mean, I think,
Well, it's kind of like what I just sort of talked about yesterday, migration, these explorers, early American. I mean, what are those important, right?
Right,
What you're
right.
talking about is from,
The benchmarks.
yes. And then the time frame of those, right? And where do they fall? And then how
How
many
we
jump,
jump.
right on that.
Are we doing fourth, fifth, or do we
I
want to
would,
just
I,
put
to
it?
me right now, I
just-
would,
Just put.
that's the problem.
Okay.
Second rights up there, come on. Come on, Craig.
All right, hey, I'm just,
So, okay, I'm confused. We are writing down benchmarks for which
For-
line?
well, we're on third,
Well,
we're on
that's what I
three.
think.
History, world history. I mean, if you think about it. that's
We're on
a
3.
really big-
That's what we're writing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. For integrated.
But we were looking at, so
US history
between,
and
or
world
if you
history.
did U.S. history across 4th and 5th grade, what chunk would you get to 4th, what chunk would you get to 5th?
Because that will determine how we write the rest of these history standards. And where we're going to place things. So if you look at that one standard, we're starting with, it's a 5th grade standard, but we start with Native Americans before Europeans.
Yeah. And then the revolution
Well,
factors.
So then is that,
yeah,
Yeah, they are. These are-
they're in the Lee document.
In this.
That's, if that is
Okay,
just that
if you
cut
like.
apart.
Just kept that
That
apart
is just
and
that
they're
cut
all-
apart.
Okay.
So that you don't have to look
And we were on
over
the
pages.
History and nine.
Yeah, that's right.
Close to the same place.
No matter what, we're starting with the earliest settlers to America, right? Pre-European.
Okay, so is that
migration?
Migration,
Falls under that?
migration of people would be underneath this.
Are you gonna cover Native Americans in that?
Well, that would,
Because, I mean, Native Americans were here after too, so I mean, that is Native Americans, obviously, but you just talk about them without the till. Is that what you're saying, that there was other?
I guess my initial thought with this would be, in some ways you could, is you would talk about what the life, that there was a society, there was a whole way of living that did not involve Europeans. They had their own ways of doing things, that you're kind of setting up the culture clash in some ways from which, when the Europeans came, what happened was that, the difference in terms of lots of things. But so I would say this is where you could talk about some of those early ancient civilizations, whatever the word for it is, whether it's, I think my question could ultimately be, how far do you go? Do you just look at the American, like the U.S. tribes, or do you look at some of those other, the major ones, like to me, that's the Mayan, the Aztecs, or
Fourth and fifth, it
Yeah.
has to be American, I think.
But see, the problem is that what's next is going to be explorers. And so many of the explorers either didn't start, like you look at Hernando Cortez, he's going to be in the Aztecs, but then they also creep up into America, or they come in through Canada and then come down, or even Columbus didn't actually land in America. So that's where that's where you kind of have some crossover. I think what you can do is look at the explorers and then focus on American settlements, and then make that switch after explorers to looking at just America, and looking at, after the assignment of the explorers, what did America look like? Starting to look at where because you're going to track like, the areas that were French, like the middle of the country was because that's where the French explorers went. The Spanish was because that's where the Spanish went, including Florida, and then the English were on the coast. And actually they had the smallest strip at first. Most of it was actually the French or Spanish. But that's because that's where those explorers at, but they started in other places.
Can I ask a question? We're talking about 10, 11-year-olds. So how much, I think kids have the capacity to memorize a lot of information. I don't know if they have a lot of, at that age, the capacity to actually, I don't know for sure. Are we asked, when we're talking about this, are we going to ask them to actually retain all of this information, or are we just giving them like background information that hopefully someday it gets brought back up in earlier grade?
Honestly, part of the reason why I can even say Hernando Cortez is because I didn't teach it. So I know this a lot better just because I had to teach it. My expectation is I want the kids to kind of have an idea. Like if I were looking at it, I would want bigger pieces. Like I want them to realize that there was one. I would want them to know
people here already.
People that, because like for us, that's one of the things. Like I was always wanting kids to know that to realize that Columbus did not actually discover anything. He discovered it for himself, and for other people who didn't know, that'd be like everybody discovers something new every day. Yeah, this was that was not, and that's one aspect of it. But then just this idea of how things kind of started to come together. That's because to me it's hard to do. It's hard to set up for those coming through the revolution and the founding of the country without understanding that a lot of it started because of the clash amongst the European countries. But even because the other part I didn't think about was what led. If you start to think about what led people, even Columbus and some of those people, to start to look at why did they even find it? It's actually Marco Polo.
Okay, I have a question. That would be probably really done. In all, no, really. No, in all of this, and we're setting up standards. We want them to know how much of this is dependent on. This is not writing curriculum, correct?
Right. So what
So you
we
know what I'm
write
saying to me?
here?
You read through a history book when you're in 4th grade, and it kind of gives you a little, like you're saying, you these names are dropped in, little background, and then you go on to where you're going. How much of this is dependent on curriculum?
All of it.
Yeah.
But if we want them,
we could.
right, if we want them to think through it, then we have to put it on here.
And
Otherwise, they say
I'm not saying we're doing
explorers
smart.
aren't listed
Yeah.
because I've got a finite amount of time. So
like, and I'm with you. I think it's now you're
What are they
I
gonna
would
do
think
with
because I'm getting too
this?
specific. So you may want to look at what we want to know what were some of the factors that led Europeans to even go go that, like, for that's the exploration, like, what
Well,
were
I
some
was
of the
looking for
factors?
another right.
Well, and
That
that's
may
where
be
you got to
geography or
yesterday,
maybe
you were talking about
economy.
migration.
Right,
I mean-
and I don't know if that fits in geography or economics even, and start talking about push and pull factors.
Here's an example. It starts out, identify and describe early cultures and settlements that existed in North America prior to contact with Europeans. And then the next one, examine accounts of early European explorations of North America, including major land and water routes, reasons for exploration, and the impact that exploration had. And then it lists examples of the Vikings, explorations and settlements in Greenland and North America, Spanish expeditions by Christopher Columbus, Cortez, and Francisco, expeditions by French explorers, Cartier, Champlain, and expeditions of England and Holland by explorers. Hudson and White. And then the next one is compare and contrast historic Indian groups of the West, Southwest, Northwest.
Who is that?
This one I think is Ohio, and then Massachusetts. Theirs is very similar but much more specific. And it's like, so there's starts. I think I read this one yesterday. Pre-Columbian civilizations of the New World through settlement, say 1700, and so it described the earliest explorations of the New World by the Vikings, period and locations of their explorations and the evidence for them. Identified the three major pre-Columbian civilizations, their locations, describe their political structures, religious practices, and use of slaves. The next one, explain what trade routes to Asia had been closed in the 15th century, trace the voyages, describe what each explorer sought, when they began, what they found, and then it lists 9 specific people. And then the next one, explain why the Aztec and Inca civilizations declined, and then it gives the reasoning. It's very specific.
Right.
And there's another 6 or 7.
Yeah,
It's
that's
curriculum.
more- That is curriculum, right, that's non-standard.
But I think that's why they're standard. A broad range of people because they're very specific.
And there's no, what do we do with?
Exactly, it's
Right.
telling you.
Yes. Okay, so early mixed settlers, the beginning pieces of migration, and then early explorations or exploration. Do we include something in here about culture clashes?
I think you could talk about what was the impact on the Native American tribes of the European exploration. That's when you do things like plagues and the wiping out of whole civilizations. All the way down to the fact that there had never been horses, or something like those.
I was just thinking that earlier, whenever we talk about Indians in my classroom.
Right.
Some of them, what we're talking about is pre,
What they know.
well,
Wild West.
yeah, the Wild West stuff. I mean, it's pre, well, they had horses. No, they didn't, and they don't, that doesn't even, because they either walked or they canoed. I mean, because they lived close to rivers. And that's about it. And they don't understand.
Right.
So
Oh, picture
so
us.
we were studying fruits.
Years later.
Before that one or after that?
I've heard years
Which
later.
one back before? Oh, that's the earliest, okay, never mind.
Okay.
So then the impact to the populace.
Right. Then you start into colonization at that point. And the European clashes. Settlements.
Historically, that's what we started with, was the settlements.
Which led to,
No, I think in here is this is, and this is just kind of my own thought here, but is this where we fit it back into another piece of the expanding horizons? And this is where we start to look at regions even a little bit. Like, what would be the settlements in the southwest, the settlements in the southeast, northeast, midwest? Because there's different places that were settled. Like the oldest city is St. Augustine. So what was the St. Augustine versus Jamestown versus some of the things?
Identifying located the 13 British colonies by region and describing political, social, and economic organization and structure of each region.
No, I think that's a good idea.
Then obviously you end up kind of eventually focusing more on the English ones because that's what leads into the other part. We may not actually. I'm still looking at it by green.
And what's the next big chunk? Right. Establishment of the colonies.
Oh, is that what that was settlements on?
I think that's
Well, settlements,
Where they're actually
right.
called Jamestown.
Two.
And then
Okay,
you get more
gotcha.
specific even within there and start to look at specific
Right.
European settlement or English settlements even, like Plymouth, Jamestown, Roanoke.
To colonization next.
Well, that's what when you say
Right.
colonization, where usually this goes to when we taught it and went straight from here more to the French.
To the French and Indian War, which is
Oh, yeah.
sets up
Because it's
colonization.
in time, it's
Right.
in that front time frame.
After that, we have the victors, good spoils. That's when the colonies. That's when we start looking at the
Sure.
colonies, and you start setting up, which sets up the causes of the Revolutionary War.
Right. So you don't put that here. Then we move to revolution.
Our declaration. We put the declaration there.
To Revolutionary War. To founding of America. Founding of the country.
Those three, those two right there. Causes of the Revolutionary War and the founding of the country. To me, those almost need to be written in bigger letters or multiple times just to make it. Because that seems
The big chunks, right?
Yeah.
But we're just writing the
Right.
chunks, right? We're not trying to determine which.
So founding, I would say constitutions, and that includes the writing of the Constitution.
Right.
I would say you could do writing of the Constitution, and then the Constitution is two separate almost. Because you have the Constitutional Conventions, you've got all of those pieces, what did that look like, the ratification of it, and then what was actually written, which would almost be two separate.
Yeah.
Going to. Do you hit Washington? I mean, the first president's coming here at some point.
I mean, there's so much when you start looking at people, sons
Right.
of the, all the, right.
Right.
You've got all
So.
those people within there too. There's all there somewhere.
Federalist, yeah, Federalist.
Right.
And you've got depending on how far, that's what I said, those are so,
Right.
there's so much in just there.
So is the next big chunk though Jeffersonian democracy? Is that the next piece? Because all those things are in here.
Right. So up through some of that, yeah, if you would look at War of 1812 would be after Jefferson.
Right. Is Jefferson in 1802?
1803 was Louisiana Purchase, so somewhere there. Did you know that Thomas Jefferson, John Adams actually died on the same day? It was July 4th.
Yep. I did.
The exact same July 4th?
I did.
Yeah, it was like the exact same
Yeah, the
day.
exact same day. Few hours, like 6 hours apart. Football kind of ran.
Yeah. My president report when I didn't do it was on John Adams. I remember like his quote was, "Well, I'm okay with dying because at least I know Thomas Jefferson is still alive," and he actually I mean, Jeffersonian democracies are, and I think also this is where, because you're starting to, what, so my head as I'm looking back on this as a teacher was moving from the Constitution, and what takes the place between there, and what all falls in between that and the Civil War. You've got the country expanding.
So, do you want me to, you mentioned several things. Do you want me to just dot them in? Because you talk about Sons of the Revolution, you talk about certain first presidents. Do we just assume that's
Yeah,
in here?
I don't think,
Okay.
that's not gonna be.
All right.
This is just for us.
Right, yes. So, the next piece then is Jeffersonian democracy.
What, can somebody give me an education on that? Like, I mean, my 8th grader is learning about that right now, so I'm trying to think what she's, what's the,
Where's Alden?
Do what?
Alden.
Where's Alden?
Be able to tell you, I'm sure.
The big chunk of that has to do with the people feeling like they have more representative voice. Is really his election is known as